6Three podcast. Your home for the most in-depth analysis on all things sports, entertainment, and basically anything else you can come up with. Where we have some of the hottest takes, some of the craziest takes,
But there we go.
some of the dumbest takes, and where we believe that opinions are like. And now, to your hosts, Joel, Isaiah, and
Ben.
RJ.
Thanks for tuning into the 6-3 podcast, episode 29, August 4, 2020. Sports has picked up again, so there's some good news there. There's some questionable things going on the seasons, how they're going to last. Baseball, obviously the Tigers aren't playing until Friday, we saw. Now with the Cardinals having like 13 come up for positive COVID tests. We'll see how that goes. Basketball, haven't watched. I don't see a whole lot of basketball or NHL news other than who's kneeling, so haven't really paid a whole lot of attention there. But I do miss. I did miss baseball, and so I've been watching baseball.
Yeah, I've been keeping up with the NBA pretty well. Like watching some of the big games when I get a chance. The Celtics are my second favorite team in the league, so I'm watching them playing the Heat as we speak, with it muted in the background. Seeing our Lincoln Robinson shoot up some threes too, but yeah, it's good to just have new sports in the world.
White Sox have won 5 in a row, so I'm pumped. So it's been good. As long as they finish the season. So if they don't, I'm going to be pretty bummed.
Yeah, and that's going to bring us to, like, obviously the questions with the NFL. I mean, we're seeing opt-outs, and now officially they announced that Thursday at 4 p.m. is the opt-out deadline.
Right.
Obviously anyone wants to opt out after that, they're just not getting paid. But they're going to I think we're going to either start seeing some pretty big names opt out, and maybe some will follow, or it's just that's what the season could have a couple of second stringers plugged in there. But I mean, last I checked, I think there was like maybe 80 opt outs, and there's over 2,000 starters in the NFL. Yep. So
I think some late round draft picks and undrafted free agents are probably really happy with that news right now. You're going to see. I mean, Philip Lindsay type guys who just get a chance and burst onto the scene this year, which could be really interesting. Could make for like good fantasy picks. Good, just like I think like rookie of the year race might be really good with some of those guys getting some time to shine more than they would have. So, and then we'll see the Patriots go 0-16 and get Trevor Lawrence next year.
You know, they're trying. They're doing something.
I think I saw a list with like teams of how many people have opted out, and some teams have like 2, maybe 3 of their starters, and then the Patriots have like 6.
I think Patriots up to 8. I think they had a lead at 8.
This was a couple of days ago. Yeah,
Matt Lacoste was the last one, and he's technically already a borderline starter with their weak tight end group that they already do have. So they're even weaker now at tight end, and I think we ranked them last. So,
but then again, we might see Bill Belichick just win Coach of the Year by going like 14-2 with a bunch of weird guys.
That's the only other thing I could think of is Bill Belichick is proving Tom Brady needed me more than I needed him.
Yeah, just everybody stay at home. I'm going to show Tom something.
Yeah.
There's been some big names, like C.J. Mosley and Patrick Chung, Dante Hightower, and Michael Pierce is like, I think he's a 91 overall defensive tackle in Madden for 21.
Yeah.
So you're getting some pretty big guys, some notable starters, but I don't think anyone – and they just took Stafford off the COVID list.
Yeah.
I saw that was a false positive.
Yep.
I wonder how many of those are out there, but
right.
Yeah, no, it was a struggle to see his name on there, but luckily it's early enough to say like, okay, he's gonna be like he'll be fine.
Yeah, well, and thankfully they just removed it. He's never had COVID, and his whole family's never had COVID. So
great for his wife though, because she's been sick.
And they have a newborn, and they have really young kids and a newborn. So there's definitely reasons where you could think that. Would you blame Stafford if he opted out at this point, or?
I wouldn't really blame anyone, but like, I don't know. I think a lot of them will regret it. Like, it depends how the season goes. If the season goes kind of how the NHL and NBA bubble have gone, and like they've kept it pretty under wraps and like not many tests, then a lot of guys will regret it. If it's like the MLB where then an entire team gets wiped out, then a lot of guys are going to be like putting up eyeball emojis on Twitter saying, "See, I told you, like this is what happened." So it'll be interesting.
To me, in my head personally, and I'm not dealing with everything maybe they have going on at home. I don't know their whole personal stories, but if I had, the athletic abilities that they do, and I had the physique and probably just the stamina to beat a typical virus or whatever, I'd be like, all right, if I get it, I suffer for 3 or 4 days, and I'll be able to beat it pretty well. I think a lot of people that are physically in shape or don't have pre-existing conditions, like most professional athletes, are able to deal with this pretty well.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know all the personal things that these guys have going on in their lives, so I'm not gonna, that's their life. They're gonna make those choices. But I agree. I think there's gonna be some sort of regret, especially if this either goes away more or I don't know. Just anything could change. Anything can happen, though. That's the thing, and that's the thing with the opting out, the deadline for Thursday. Anything can happen after Thursday still, where it gets significantly worse or it almost becomes nothing.
Right.
Personally, it might be once November 4 comes around, it's just disappeared. But other subjects.
Yep.
Stick to sports.
Right. There's other people that should stick to politics. I'll stick to sports. Yeah, so we can transition to the main thing that we were going to come in and talk about, and that is last week we did top 20 quarterbacks of all time. Took a little while, so we were shrinking our list down to the Big 12, and that is for running backs this week. Who are the top 12 running backs of all time? And who wants to take this one off?
I can start it off.
Yeah, he isn't.
I think we talked pre-show. Me and Joel have the same at 12, so I'll start at 12. And my guy is Frank Gore. So how I wrote my stats down, I was telling you guys earlier, I put touchdowns, fumbles, receiving yards, how long their career was, and yards per year, because I think that's better indicator of how good they were than yards over, like total yards. So Frank Gore, 1,023 yards per year, 80 touchdowns, 46 fumbles, just under 4,000 receiving yards in a 15-year career that's still going on. So I kind of took a couple notches down on him. Like, he's got a big total on a lot of these numbers, but he's also been, at least in my top 12, he has the longest career. There's one other guy who played 15 years, but Frank Gore's going to play a 16th. So he's the longest career, so those numbers get up there because of that, and because I think – this last season was his first season not leading his team in rushing. So he always gets opportunity. He's only missed like 15 games in his career, which kind of speaks to how good his ability to play so many games. Like, that's a big part of why he's so good. But yeah, so I think he fits right there at number 12. He hasn't been, to me, a top 10 running back all time. I think a lot of it, like I said, is just how long he's been in the league, but he still has some really good numbers.
Yeah, there's some guys I rotated around and thought about plugging in here or not, and I ended up ultimately agreeing with you and putting Frank Gore at 12. You got to commend him for the durability. Going into 16 seasons now, limited concussions. We'll see what happens when he's 55 or whatever. But he's played the same amount of games exact as Emmitt Smith, 224 of his team's 240 games. And so he could have more. But the NFL has also been running back by committee for like the last 3 years. So that's also a reason where he's lost some opportunities in rushing yards those last 3 seasons as well. So I did give him the benefit of the doubt there and put him at 12.
Yeah, I think
I
think the age of the running back is over. So I wouldn't be surprised if, you even see it already, but you don't see that many 1,000-yard backs really anymore either. Or maybe not even 1,000, but like 1,200 to 1,500-yard backs. I mean, that just doesn't happen very often anymore. Trying to think, Christian McCaffrey might be the only real featured back who can, 3-down running back. So, other than a couple guys here and there in separate games, Derrick Henry, I guess, a little bit too. But those guys are a dying breed, just because the game's changed. You can't take those hits anymore. So.
Yeah. But I think that's why, I'm guessing we all have AP on our list a little higher than here, but people like him and Frank Gore can find a place on a roster because they may only be needed for 20 downs a game or something like that. 10, 15 carries a game just to, get those couple extra yards where they just cover the ball and put their head down and run, because that's kind of what they do now. They just take not huge hits. They aren't out in open space to get injured, and they're just kind of reliable. I mean, Adrian Peterson, Washington kind of relied on him for a little more than Buffalo relied on Frank Gore this past year. But it's how you get these people to have longer careers now, is that they don't have to be featured back with hundreds of carries a year trying to get 1,200 yards like Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey anymore.
Right.
Yeah, Ben, who did you have at 12 there?
I had Marcus Allen at 12.
Okay.
Yeah, he was definitely one of those guys
13.
was battling back and forth with trying to plug in there. But
And I mean, we kind of talked about it. I mean, I wouldn't knock having Frank Gore was probably, I mean, if we did 13, he probably would have been my 13. So it's tough. Frank Gore isn't a guy I think, without looking into it, I think of, oh my gosh, one of the top 12 or even 15 running backs, in NFL history. But then when you really look at it, you're like, yeah, I mean, this guy's been pretty much a stud for his entire career, and he's had a long career. So I think people will look fondly upon his career. Obviously he's probably a Hall of Famer when he is a Hall of Famer when he retires. But people are going to look back at his career and be like, man, he was actually really, really good. We just didn't really realize it.
there was just always two or three other running backs that were better than at his time.
Exactly. But he was just consistent. So it's an impressive, very, very impressive career. Crazy.
Very low on fumbles too.
Yeah, never fumbles. Yeah, impressive.
Yeah, so number 11, this one might be one you guys might not have put on your list, but I did put Big Earl Campbell. And
you have Earl Campbell a little higher, actually.
I mean, yeah, he only played for 8 years, so there's definitely reasons where you could put him higher. And he's 37th all-time in rushing yards, but to me that doesn't make it. He's notoriously known as one of the toughest running backs to ever tackle, and you just have to watch the tape. I remember my senior year of high school, we had a running back, big old farm boy that just took guys with him. Like he was 6'3" and 225 pounds, and he was just taking guys with him in high school. So, and that's kind of what I think of, Earl Campbell. He was like 250 pounds, and he was like 6'2", and he wouldn't go down unless he had 4 guys on him. So, I think just the sheer brute of a guy that if he maybe did play longer, obviously you play 8 years because the toll that all those 4 guys on every tackle takes on you probably shortens the career. But I think just every year he was one of the toughest running backs to play against.
One of the craziest Earl Campbell stats. So his stat line over his first 3 seasons in the league, 5,081 rushing yards, 45 touchdowns, and 4.9 yards a carry.
Yeah.
His first 3 seasons in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he started to deal with getting banged up, and that's probably part of the reason why he didn't play all that much longer after those first 3 seasons. But incredible first 3 seasons in the league.
For sure.
Yeah. No, I had him actually at number 9 on my list. So a little bit higher just because, I did kind of move him. I was moving around like between 8 and 10. I was moving those 3 guys around because he only played 8 years. So it's hard to say like
smaller sample size compared to
small sample size. So like he could have been like a Marcus Allen or one of these other guys who kind of weaned off towards the end of their career. I mean, a lot of these guys had a strong 10 years, but some of them were like their yards per year, games played, or totals kind of go down towards those last 5 years. But yeah, if you want to know like what Earl Campbell would be in today's NFL, just look at like Derrick Henry. Like he was just a big guy, like you said, like 6 foot, 250, and just it took so many guys to take him down.
Yeah, you go back even a couple years before Derrick Henry, Brandon Jacobs, very similar in size. Jerome Bettis, like those are similar guys. I just think Earl Campbell did it even better than some of those. So
Yep.
Ben, who'd you have at 11?
My 11, you guys will. Well, yeah, my 11 was actually Gale Sayers.
Ooh, okay.
It was similar in a way to Earl Campbell that he barely played even less than Earl Campbell. But Gale Sayers, I mean, I took a lot of it to like, kind of like I did the quarterbacks is, who was considered the best of their age. Who was considered the best running backs of their age? Not that Gale Sayers there weren't other good running backs at the time. Only playing for 7 seasons brought him down further on my list. I mean, he retired when he was 28. And there's a couple people on here that retired kind of early that will come to find, I'm sure. But just literally one of the best running backs of all time. I mean, pretty much, I wouldn't say invented, but like made the jump cut cool. I mean, if you hear about people talking about jump cuts with running backs, I mean, they say, oh, he looks like Gale Sayers out there. His stats obviously don't match up, but 5 yards per carry is pretty crazy, even through just.
And he was a lethal kick returner too. He had some of the best.
His kick return yards. I got him here. He's 8 touchdowns on just 118 returns, which is crazy. So, that's why I had him on the list for sure.
Definitely a great athlete. And I think that's why he might have slipped my mind when I was trying to go through some running backs, is I'm not looking at running backs that had, 6 or 7 years, but except for Terrell Davis. I think Terrell Davis only played for like 7 or 8 years too, but I still found him. And obviously Earl Campbell, but Gale Sayers, I don't know. He must have slipped my mind. He is another guy that would definitely be right in that 10 to 15 range for me for sure.
Yeah. If we would have gone up to 15, I think I would have had Gale Sayers. I did have him on my list. Like, I just wrote down like 15 names that came to mind and like looking at people's lists online, and he was on there. But yeah, just the length of career and really like take away the 7 years, because in those last 2 years he had less than 100 yards combined. It was really like a 5-year career. And I just like, he was amazing in those 5 years, but he would have totally been in my top 15. But just because he really only had 5 solid years, I had to bump him down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then at my 11, I had Buffalo Bills Thurman Thomas.
Ooh, Thurman
Thomas is good.
Just about 1,000 yards per season, 65 touchdowns, 50 fumbles, 4,500 receiving yards, which is more than I thought he would have had. But obviously part of those the 4 falls of Buffalo, I think, is the 30 for 30 name, where they went to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row and lost. Part of those teams. So other than them being known for their tragedy, those were amazing teams.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, can't remember if we talked about Jim Kelly in our quarterback list, but Thurman was, besides Jim Kelly, the workhorse of that team. He was just the heart. And I remember watching that documentary and them just being like, yo, we didn't think we'd win, and Thurman Thomas just like comes in with like just an amazing 3rd down run or a 4th down conversion or something. So yeah, I had him right at 11. I thought that was a deserving spot for him.
Mm-hmm. I disagree with that.
Ben, what you got at 10 there?
Number 10, and some of you might think he's a little too low on my list, but I had LT, LaDainian Tomlinson. 3-time first team All-Pro. He's 5-time Pro Bowler. Obviously, he had the ridiculous year in 2006 that everybody's going to remember. There's a fly in here. It's flying on the camera. Just some crazy stats that year. 31 scores, 2,323 all-purpose yards in 2006. That year, I mean, they rode him into the ground that year. Obviously, he was had an absurd year. Is it 13,684 rushing yards, 145 touchdowns, which is crazy. 4.3 yards per carry. I mean, that's good. It's not like insane though, which tells you how much they were riding him into the ground during his career with the Chargers. I think his career is a little bit tainted by those last 2 seasons with the Jets because they were pretty terrible, pretty bad, especially for his standards. But one of the greatest running backs of all time. I mean, you could make an argument that he deserves to be higher as well. But I just felt they were more deserving backs higher up on this list.
Yeah, I'm at 7, but he was for a long time. He was probably my favorite player in the NFL to watch. I chose 21 as my high school football jersey because of LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah,
and I remember I always tried to draft him in the fantasy drafts on Madden back in those mid 2000s. And I remember I tried to catch every Chargers game on TV if they had it. And there's something about him. Obviously, you talked about his last 2, even 3 seasons. His last season, even with the Chargers, was not good. But he started his career out with 8 seasons of 1,000 yards or more. Right. And he was also one of the best receiving backs at that time when he was playing as well. Yeah. So I think just the bonus points for some of his receiving ability. And then the killer start as probably one of the best running backs in the league for 8 straight years when he first came in. Made me put him at 7. So
then 06 was, I mean, without a doubt, one of the best years that running backs had.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, no, I had LT a bit higher, or LD. I don't want to get mixed up with Lawrence Taylor, but I had him a bit higher. I'll let you know when we get to that number. But one of the biggest things for me with him and putting him way higher is he only had 30 fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
So at basically 150 touchdowns, 30 fumbles. If you can have 5 touchdowns per fumble, like that's an amazing. Like if I don't.
Yeah, that's only 2.8 fumbles a year. So that's
Cool. So 11 years, 30 fumbles, that pushed him way up on my, he was, right around that 5, 6, 7, 8 range. And then I pushed him up a little bit higher just because he held on to the ball for as many things as he was doing and as many rounds as he was playing, he just held on to the rock.
Yep.
But yeah, at my 10, I have Tony Dorsett for the Cowboys. So
sure,
pushed him down a little bit. He could have been higher, but talking about fumbles again, he had 90 fumbles. He had more fumbles than touchdowns. So that was an alarming statistic to me. But he had a 12-year career, over 1,000 yards per season. And then he did have 3,500 receiving yards, which was pretty good. So, yeah, I had Tony Dorsett right at that 10. I thought, like I said, those fumbles took him down a little bit for me, but he was still a really productive back on some good teams.
Yeah, and I don't want to forget, I have Marshall Faulk at 10 on my list. Yeah. He had 12 years. Putting him on the Madden cover back in 2003 basically confirmed the end of his career. If you just look at the numbers, the Madden curse definitely ended his career for sure.
Yeah.
But he had 80-plus catches for 5 seasons, along with at least 950 yards rushing or more in those. So he had 5 years as easily the best receiving running back and also probably a top 3 running back at that time in that span. So, 12 years, 5 elite seasons for those, and then obviously most of the rest of those, other than his last 3 years, were really good. So
I had Marshall Faulk at 8. He almost had 7,000 receiving yards in 12 years for a running back, especially in it was starting to get more of a receiving back in the early 2000s and late 90s, but just for that era, he was one of the first you can rush, but you can really catch the ball too.
He changed Madden because that Madden didn't have passing routes to running backs really, other than quick ones behind the line. And then they started adding the out routes and the curls for those guys. And I don't know, he was definitely a piece of changing the way Madden played, along with obviously the next year Michael Vick with the quarterback running. So I don't know. I always had a soft spot for Marshall Faulk to at least be on a top 10 list. So.
Yep.
All right, Isaiah, number 9.
Well, we already talked about him, but I had Earl Campbell at number 9. So, yeah, we already kind of pressed on him, and then I had Marshall Faulk at number 8. So those are kind of my guys. But, yeah, so I'll let you guys give your number 9 because we already talked about Earl Campbell.
Okay.
Well, I had Jim Brown at number 9. 9 years. 940 yards or more every season that he played, and he averaged 5.2 yards a carry his entire career, and he was a fullback at that time, but he was the go-to guy for them. Obviously, fullbacks did get more attention back in the day, but if you watch Peyton Manning's ESPN Plus special about the death of the fullback, he goes out and he talks to Jim Brown, and Jim Brown is just a classic person. Obviously, wears the gold jacket better than a lot of people, but I just felt like I was almost still doing a disservice putting him at number 9 on my list. But
he's a little higher on mine. But
Yeah,
some people aren't gonna like my number 9, but O.J. Simpson, number 9. Nobody has done more to tarnish his career than O.J. Simpson post-career. So we will lead with that. However,
allegedly.
Allegedly. However, OJ was still one of the more dynamic backs to ever play the game when he played. I still look at his 1973 season as one of the best seasons ever. 143.1 rushing yards per game is still insane regardless of era. He averaged 6 yards a carry that season. and his 4.7 yards per carry out for his career are huge. That's why I kind of had him on the list. Some people probably don't put him on the list, but I think he's deserving if you just look at his football career.
Yeah, he was the first one to break 2,000 yards rushing in a season, so that's a big number right there.
From 1972 to 1976, he ran for 7,699 yards and 54 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So pretty insane, especially when he was kind of in the prime of his career. Obviously, this doesn't take into account anything that he's done post-football, anything that he allegedly has done post-football.
You mean make sick tweet videos?
Yeah, and freak out that COVID's getting rid of his golfing and all that.
I missed that one. I'm going to go back on Twitter.
Yeah, those are funny. If you look those up, it's pretty funny. But, he I think he just at least deserves to be on his list for his football ability during the time of his playing career. So crazy good to college career, too, if you look at his stuff.
I was going to say, he won a Heisman Trophy there, too, so.
Yeah, I didn't have him on my list because, I was just like, ooh, O.J. Simpson. But I probably should have, and I would have probably had him right around this place, high top 10, top 15 for sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, number 8, I guess I'll spew out Adrian Peterson. He's played, what is it, 14? He's going into his 14th year now. But he's only played about 11 and a half years of healthy football, and he's still got the numbers that he has. Obviously, again, like you mentioned with OJ, amazing college career he had at Oklahoma. And I think obviously that's why he was taken as early as he was in the first round, the year with Calvin Johnson and Jamarcus Russell in 2007. But just every single year that he's played, he's for the most part been one of the best running backs to finish each and every one of these seasons. If I'm looking at his numbers right here. I don't know, just good yards per carry. And we have, as football fans, been able to watch him most of his career too. So we also get to see in person what he does each week. Yeah. And I remember I felt like the Lions were, as bad of a team as they were, always able to stifle him when they played for the most part. And same with like other elite guys in their division, like Devin Hester. And I could go off on another tangent, but the Lions were always good at able to stop him. But any other game I watched Adrian Peterson play, he'd be mowing 150 yards at least.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had AP one spot higher at number 7. I just think he's had an incredible career. I mean, a little bit of controversy, a couple injury kind of dampened that, but I think it's like there's a little bit of like the Frank Gore. He's just been able to do it for so long and find a spot on teams in his older age, just kind of being that like every other down back, or not maybe not the main workhorse, even though, like I said, Washington asked him to do more than Buffalo asked with Frank Gore. But the fact that he's like he's still like a 75-yard touchdown threat. Like I think it was, I don't know if it was last season or the season before, but he just broke one for about 80 yards.
I was going to mention that one.
Yeah, right through the middle of the line.
Yeah.
Shifty, broke a couple tackles, and like was no one else on the other team, I don't remember what team it was, but could catch him. And it's just like, oh, Adrian Peterson can still do that. Like that's why, I had him right at 7, like where we're talking about. But it's interesting to see that this guy can still do that. Frank Gore can't still do that. Like some guys when they were in their 13th and 14th year could not still do that. But Adrian Peterson, if you give him space, he'll make you pay still in his career.
And this, I know we're not really factoring college into it much at all, but his college highlight film is still he and Reggie Bush.
Yeah, I was gonna say Reggie Bush.
You could watch that now and just be like, just in awe. And honestly, I might be even more in awe of Adrian Peterson just because Reggie Bush was like a little bit after AP when Reggie Bush was in his prime of his college career. So like I remember Reggie Bush a little bit better watching him. But Adrian Peterson's time at Oklahoma was just absurd. And he was one of the guys where they're talking about now where, like, should you let high school players come out, and get in the NFL draft or whatever. There aren't very many high school players that could physically do that. And Adrian Peterson is probably one of, like, 5 that I could name off my hand who probably could have come out of high school and done that because of how insanely – just physically gifted they were and physically mature they were just when they were 18 years old.
Was Reggie Bush 2 years before Adrian Peterson? I thought he was 2005.
Reggie Bush was 05. AP
Peterson was
2007.
2007.
Was he 2007?
Yeah. I mean, still, I don't disagree.
Yeah, he was
I
2007.
watched the highlight film of both those guys, and if you just pull up highlight films from college for both Reggie Bush and Adrian Peterson, you're probably going to kill 2 hours because there's that much good stuff from both those guys in college. But Adrian Peterson obviously even translated really well to the NFL. And I think that's what makes him even more appealing if you watch his Oklahoma film compared to Reggie Bush's USC film. He not only was he super fast, but he was powerful. And Reggie Bush was just known as the elusive guy.
Yeah, it's sad that the game I know Adrian Peterson for is the the Fiesta Bowl versus Boise State.
Yeah, when they lost.
I know he's incredible, but like that's the game I know him for.
Yeah.
Because like when I was in high school or middle school, I guess it was 2007. Like Boise, I became like a kind of a Boise State fan because I watched that game and
Buster Field was awesome. I love that one.
But I feel bad that's one of my memories of Adrian Peterson. But yeah, he's been incredible.
Well, he didn't torch the Lions enough. I mean, he had a couple good games against the Lions, but I mean, we're watching the Lions games for the most part. If we watched any primetime games that the Vikings played or whatever, games after the Lions at 4:00, like he put up great games. So it's just we got plenty of sample size against the Lions, but we've seen the Lions stop him for 54 yards in a game before. So we're like, oh, Adrian Peterson. And
there's a reason. There's a reason everyone in Madden knows Adrian Peterson with his 296 rushing yards in a game because that's the record everyone tries to break as soon as they can. But he's the one that holds it in the real world. So, like, just having almost 300 rushing yards in an NFL game is just ridiculous. I couldn't imagine, like, you could name me maybe 2 or 3 names of people that could do that today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Jerome Harrison was like a 4th-string running back for the Browns, and he finished at 290.
Yeah.
But that was a pure luck. He had like two or three runs that were like 60 yards or more. Just pretty much took care of the whole thing there. So, But yeah, so I guess moving into
7.
Are we at 7?
Yeah.
Ben, who do you have at 7?
So we already talked about him by Marshall Faulk at 7.
Okay.
So we can discuss it for a little bit, but yeah, we kind of talked about it. Kind of changed running back, kind of brought running back into what we know the running back is now. But really, he was kind of like a third down back in an every down back's body. Really just an incredible receiver. I mean, they could put him in the slot. He would be so perfect in today's offenses. Like, he would just be like, imagine putting him and what he could do in like an offense like the Chiefs right now. Like, that guy would just dominate because he can do it all. I mean, he catch the ball, he runs the ball, protect the passer. I mean, he's just an all-around running back. So really fun to watch. I remember, and he could fly. I mean, super fast. Just really fun to watch. Those offenses, obviously, for the Rams were really, really fun overall.
Greatest show on turf.
Greatest show on turf, obviously. But, I definitely had him at 7. I think he's probably can slot anywhere between the 10 to 7 range or so. I mean, his stats match up with pretty much anybody on this list. So definitely really, really impressive running back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Isaiah, you already said you had him off your list too. I had Tony Dorsett. I know we talked about him 7, but 12. He played for 12 years, ran for 1,000 yards in 8 of his first 9 seasons. So another really good hot start to his career, and again, one of those players that kind of died towards the end of his career. But
it happens with running backs, though. Like,
yeah,
it really
sure.
does. Like,
I mean, get it guaranteed. You're pretty much getting tackled 300 times a year. Not a lot of players can say they get tackled 300 times a year.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's one of the biggest positions where like you have this like he retired too late. You can say that about some quarterbacks like a Brett Favre or some of those like some guys where you can say, man, he should have retired a couple years early. But there's running backs who it's just like, hey, man, you had a great career. I'm glad you played 15 years, but you should have played like 12.
Yeah.
You should have just kind of like I mean, we talked about who was it? Gale Sayers. Like,
yeah,
you should have just played those 5 years and like whether it was injuries, whether it was whatever, just like yeah. But then you got people like Adrian Peterson who get an almost career-threatening injury, but then come back and are productive. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, but even then, it's like he's still playing. So like, what if he does play 3 more years and really struggles?
Right. Yeah.
Look at him, like, and like you said, that's not a thing as much with quarterbacks, unless they just end up being like crappy backups for like 4 years on a bench. But that just doesn't happen with quarterbacks nearly as much.
Yeah. Most other positions, they like. You don't see all these guys like just trying to soak their career for as many years as they can. But running back, at least in history in running back, maybe because they were so dependent on in a team, maybe the coaches tried to like get them to keep going. But they definitely have that. But all right, well, moving on to number 6. My number 6 is Eric Dickerson. I had him a little higher. I was moving him around with a couple other guys, but 1,200 yards per season, 90 touchdowns. Almost 80 fumbles, which was a little high, but I think Eric Dickerson just like he could truck someone, he could break tackles whenever he wanted to. He was just an incredible back. Like there's a reason those golden blue jerseys like ring a bell, because from that era Eric Dickerson for the Rams. So I really like Eric Dickerson, but not quite in my top 5, but right there at number 6, I felt like that's where he belonged.
Yeah, so we already talked about my 6, so I don't really have to say much. I had LaDainian Tomlinson there, but Eric Dickerson, interesting choice there. He was a guy that I was thinking about moving back and forth with Emmitt Smith at 3 and 4. I have Dickerson there at 4. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, it's not a long career, about 11 years, but he averaged 5.6 yards a carry that year that he broke 2,000 rushing yards. He was the second player to break 2,000 rushing yards, and again, several other seasons where he had at least 1,400 rush yards for the Rams. For that day and age, also, that league they were kind of going through a transition between pass and run era, too, at that time.
He was a different running back, though. I mean, he's 6'3". You don't – I mean, even in today's day and age, you don't see any 6'3" running backs who are the 6'3" podcast.
Derrick Henry and Brandon Jacobs are the ones that pop in my head right now.
Yeah, I mean, but it just doesn't happen. I mean, it just doesn't – I mean, I don't know. That's just not a thing that running backs are. If you were to ask my dad, because he was a senior in high school in 1984, who the best running back he's ever seen, he was going to tell you Barry Sanders, and then he's going to say Eric Dickerson. I guarantee it, because he's like that guy in 1984 was just a man amongst boys, just an absolute beast. He was also part of the SMU recruiting scandal, which is kind of fun to listen and read about, and that 30 for 30 is always good.
Yeah, 30 for 30 is the one I know from that. Yeah.
Pony Excess, that was a good one. So.
Yeah. No, I have no qualms with picking him in the top 5. I think I don't think he's undeserving of that. But yeah, if you would have just if you could pick let's say the 5 best years of a career for a running back to have, probably 3 or 4 of those 5 might be Eric Dickerson. Having 1,800 yards, 2,000 yards like that, he had a few insane years. He had some down years, especially towards the end of we talked about, but he was just during the prime of his career, there was not a running back better.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Number 5, I've got Curtis Martin.
Yes.
11 years, ran 1,000 yards each season until his last, and that's only because he played 12 games. He was on pace for it, because I think he was 800 yards when he went down through 12 games. So 4 more games to get 200 yards. That's pretty easy for most running backs of that caliber. So could have done it for 12 straight years. Definitely, in my opinion, one of the most underrated running backs, underappreciated running backs, just because, we talked about him earlier, Frank Gore, just one of those guys that seemed like there was maybe, although Frank Gore's case is 3 or 4 running backs that might have been better than him at the time. Curtis Martin was probably 2nd or 3rd all the time.
Yep.
In the time that he played, because he had to play with Barry Sanders and stuff like that, and Emmitt Smith, just other guys that were putting up better numbers. But a couple years with the Patriots, and then went over to the Jets, and it just seemed like every single game he was very effective. And I think if you just look at the numbers and what he did, yards per carry, even the touchdowns, even the receiving, and just yards per game, I think Curtis Martin has to be appreciated somewhere here in the top 5.
Yeah, I do not know how I flaked on Curtis Martin. I don't have him on my list. I definitely should have had him close to that top 5. I don't know how I saw his name on lists I was looking up, and I looked at his stats, but I just totally blanked on having him on my list.
I think, like Joel was saying, though, he wasn't flashy. He just literally got the job done and was – I mean, his numbers actually kind of stand out as flashy, but it wasn't like he was just – you think of him as like this freak of an athlete, like an Eric Dickerson or maybe an Adrian Peterson. It wasn't like he was just a, burner like some of these other guys or, didn't juke people out of their shoes like Barry Sanders. But he was just good. I mean, he was very good. And you don't even think of those Jets teams that he was on as – oh, he was on just a really good team. That's why he put up crazy numbers. Like, no, he was just the best player on those teams, and that's why he was that good. So I think he's definitely unsung. I don't think most people think of him as a top 5 or even sometimes top 10 running back, but he easily deserves to be on the list. I agree.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, who's shouting on number 4 here?
Number 4.
Well, I got to say my number 5 real quick.
Oh, that's right. You left Curtis Martin off. That's what we talked about.
Yeah. So I have Walter Payton at my number 5.
Okay.
Yeah. He all but a couple seasons he had over 1,000 yards, peaked at 1,852, over 100 touchdowns. Kind of high in fumbles with 86, but he was just workhorse back. Had a lot of receiving yards for the area he played in too. Just shy of 5,000. So, yeah, I think he is. I could have even had him higher. I did have him higher when I was moving my list around, but just incredible. Like he was, even though he was on that 1980s Bears team that was known for their defense, he was their offense for those teams. It was Walter Payton. Just running the ball down people's throats. He was just an incredible athlete, incredible running back, and yeah, easily one of the 5 best ever.
Yeah, so I had him at 2, but I think
3.
13 years. He was basically a shoo-in for 1,300 years every single year. And there's just 2 seasons where he didn't start every single game for the Bears. And I mean, a big part of the reason that not only just their really good defense back in the 80s, but he was the reason that they also pushed to the Super Bowl and several championship games at that time. Obviously, it has an award, the Man of the Year, named after him, one of the greatest character people ever to play football. And obviously, we're assessing talent. But, yeah, like you even mentioned, too, really good receiving back for the era that he played in. And I try to give him credit for that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. You want to go number 4?
And Eric Dickerson, he's already off the list. So,
all right, I'm gonna go Emmitt Smith at 4 then.
Yeah.
Emmitt Smith. I think some people think of Emmitt Smith. They don't. I think a lot of people look at his stats and be like, "Yeah, this guy's maybe best ever." I don't think he's the best running back to ever play the game, ever play in the NFL. But you can't keep him out of your top 5. You just can't. I mean, even though he was on some incredible teams. He won 3 Super Bowls. He won 4 NFL rushing titles. Had an incredible offensive line in front of him. Seems like Cowboys always have a really good offensive line.
Right.
Talk about Ezekiel Elliott with that right now. He was just consistently solid. Just a great. 18,355 rushing yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 164 touchdowns, 164 rushing touchdowns. Obviously a Hall of Famer. Just one of the best running backs of all time. I mean, he's got multiple NFL records, career rushing touchdowns, seasons with at least 1,000 rushing yards, as well as career record for 100 rushing yard games. So it's 78 100 rushing yard games of 100 or more rushing yards, which is that's a lot. So now a little bit different day and age right now in the NFL, but like back breaks 100 yards right now in the NFL, that's just a very solid day. I mean, when a team breaks 100 yards, that means you're doing something well. But if one back breaks 100 yards, he had a good day. I mean, overall, you don't see it nearly as much as it used to be, and it's kind of dying out, kind of like we talked about before. But to have 78, that's a pretty impressive stat. So definitely deserving of 5.
No, I had Emmitt Smith right at 4 too. I think. Yeah, a lot of people would say even like, how do you have him at 4? He should be 1 or 2 at least. But yeah. I think, just he got those numbers a little bit because he had a long career, but he was just a stud. He was like, if fantasy football would have been as big, he would have been a first-round draft pick every year he played, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, He was 12.
The Cardinals, yeah.
Yeah, 1,300 yards just waiting to happen. So, yeah, he had the numbers and 164 touchdowns over his career. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, those numbers are definitely, I think they're a tad inflated just because of 15-year tenure is something else for running back. We're never going to see numbers like that again with the running back by committee and just the durability of running backs these days. Like you said, Ben, the position seems to be dying a little bit. But, I mean, I think my biggest ding on him and why I was battling to put him at 3 or 4 was just, 4 years out of his 15 years where he averaged 4.3 yards a carry or more. Yeah. He was just a guy that was really good in short yardage situations. So you have a little extra push. And his durability, obviously, playing over 94% of his team's games. You can't knock him because he played that long and he still played that well for that long. But him and Barry Sanders were going at it for a long time on who was going to have the NFL rushing record and who at the time thought would never pass Walter Payton's rushing yards record of all time. And obviously Barry retired a little bit early and Emmitt Smith kept on trucking. And that's why, it's a complete disservice to leave him out of any top 5 list. Absolutely. I think definitely 3 or 4 is a really good spot for him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's get to our number 3. I'll start it off with a guy we talked about earlier, and I said I'd keep where I had him a secret, but LaDainian Tomlinson was my number 3. I just remember growing up and wanting to be LaDainian Tomlinson. Like, I just wanted to – I was a running back in high school. I broke my arm, so I didn't play the only years on the team, but, I just wanted to be him. I wanted to be able to catch the ball like him. I wanted to be able to run as fast as him. I mean, if there's anybody you can speak to – except for Barry Sanders of his numbers not being inflated because he played a long career, having 150 touchdowns in just 11 years is ridiculous.
Yep.
I don't know if we're ever going to see that again. Having only 30 fumbles in those 11 years as well, less than 3 fumbles a year, again, ridiculous. Just one of the most explosive running backs that we will ever see. One of the most fun players to ever watch. And it's a reason one of my favorite jerseys in the NFL in the NFL is that Honolulu Blue Chargers jersey. I know I love the Lions colors too, but that powder blue, just with the 21 on it and Tomlinson on the back, that's a lot of memories when I was growing up. So
yeah, that visor though.
The visor, that's
yeah.
For sure.
It's when you make if you do an offline franchise where you're just a player on Madden and you pick a running back, you're LaDainian Tomlinson.
You're getting a visor. I'm giving you a visor under the equipment section.
That's who your player is. You are LaDainian Tomlinson. You're catching the ball. You're running the ball. You're getting every touchdown that your team needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
No, definitely had good points to why you put him at that position. I don't know. Definitely, like I mentioned earlier, one of my all-time favorite players. The reason I picked 21 for my number, it's just a good blend of power and speed, elusiveness, catching. Definitely the one you want in a running back, especially in that era. It's perfect.
Complete back. I don't think they're from 7 to 3 or 4. You could probably put 8 or 9 guys in there. Honestly, I mean, you really could in any order. You could make an argument just because there's guys in there that deserve it. And that's why I don't have an issue with him being at that number. I didn't have him there. I personally had Walter Payton at 3, but there's nothing wrong with him being there. I mean, if you're flip-flopping them or wherever, I just don't think – I think if we're arguing about it, not that we are, but I'm saying if people are going to be arguing about that, they're just going to be just throwing rocks at –
right.
It's not – I mean, there's sure. Yeah, you're just playing – There's no argument. All of them are great, and they all are very deserving, regardless of what spot they're in. They're pretty level, I think.
Yeah, for
sure. Number 2. Anybody jumping in on number 2? Walter Payton's already off for me.
I have Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Short career, only 9 years, but just was amazing in those 9 years. I mean, only missed 1,000 yards. If he would have had 60 more yards in his career, he would have had 1,000 yards per year. yeah, just he is the running back. Like, he is the history of the running back in one person. Just incredible. Led his team in offense every single year. Just amazing. I mean, yeah, I don't know what else to say other than just like, it was a long time ago, so the position looked a lot different. Like we talk about, he was a fullback technically.
Yeah.
Crazy, like we would think him to be a tailback today, and he would be today. But just like, yeah, he is the history of the running back in a person in the NFL.
Yeah, it's crazy that, you know, I talked so much good about him when I brought him up in my spot, and it's sucker punched him all the way down to 8. I don't know what I was thinking, but I said really nice things about him. Like, I mean, he hit 950 yards every single year of his career, averaging 5.2 yards a carry each season. Like, those are ridiculous numbers, and if he played longer, he would obviously be on the list. And especially in that day and age, people were cramming the box because they didn't know they couldn't cover, and so they were just banking on stopping the run, especially when they played the Browns.
He dominated defenses who knew he was going to get the ball. That's pretty impressive to say. I mean, he averaged over 100 yards per game in his entire career.
I think that's one of his most impressive statistics.
I mean, you don't think about that just because, like, 100 yards, like, that's just a really solid. No, if you average that your entire career every game, like, that's insane. That's literally insane.
Yeah, and like, that's still with 2 seasons of him averaging under 80 yards per game. So that, like, in 1963, probably his best season, almost 1,900 yards, 133 yards per game, 6.4 yards per carry.
Yeah.
But then if you look at his other years, like, he had, like, that's an incredible year, but it's not really that much of an outlier. Like, 1958, 130 yards per game, 1,500 yards in the season, and 3 other seasons with at least 1,400 yards per year. Like,
right.
Yeah, I wish, like you said, Joel, I wish he would have played a little longer so he was higher up on, like, some of those all-time lists, and his numbers, like, his total numbers popped a little more. But if you take any 9 years of a running back's career, he might have the best 9 years ever.
I can get behind that. But I think we're all going to be unanimous then at number 1.
Yes.
Barry Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years, and to be 4th all-time in rushing yards in 10 years just says a lot. He had 1,100 yards each year, and he averaged 5 yards a carry his whole career and never had less than 4.3 yards a carry in any season. So what if he did play 15 years? I mean, we can go back into our topics of what if. What if Barry Sanders played 15 years like Emmitt Smith? His numbers would be untouchable. I think he finished only 3,086 yards behind Emmitt Smith, and I think that means he would just need to average 618 yards a season for 5 years. That's easy work for Barry Sanders, even if he goes through some injuries or has to miss some time, or they even do a running back by committee. Whatever they have to do, Barry Sanders for 5 years could average 618 yards a season.
It's not like – hold on. It's not like he ended on a low note like a lot of these other running backs did. So maybe that's part of the reason it's like, hey, like, maybe he knew the decline was coming and he just did not want to deal with that. And that's, you know, if that's the case, more power to him. But, like, a lot of these running backs you'll see kind of fizzled out. Like, LT fizzled out at the end of his career kind of. Not saying he just had 2 rough years. They were done. Some of these running backs are just done at the end of their career, yet they played. We talked about this earlier. They played 3 more years, and they just don't have maybe their career's tainted a little bit. Barry Sanders, no, not at all. Yeah. Not even. I mean, it was a surprise. Everybody's blown away when he retired.
And I mean, honestly, if you just even put anything else into perspective, the average lifespan for an NFL running back is under 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have other guys that burn out even faster. Larry Johnson, really good for like 2 or 3 years. Michael Turner, really good for 2 or 3 years back in the day, and did not even last 10 years like Barry Sanders did. So
Jamal Charles.
Yeah. Jamal Lewis was a really good running back for a couple of years.
Yep.
There's a lot of guys we could list and say, you know, these guys were super elite running backs for 3 years, but they fizzle out a lot faster than some of these other ones.
Yeah.
And I understand why, like, a lot of NFL coaches and GMs are afraid to give a huge payday to a running back today, because like, get to that second contract, let's say if they were a first-round pick after 4 or 5 years, And you don't know if it's all downhill from there. If these
Right.
want 10, 15 million a year, they want to be paid like a quarterback, some of them say. It's like, dude, Ezekiel Elliott, like probably one of the best like featured backs over the past few years.
Yep.
Best handful of years in the NFL, and one of those younger guys. Like, but at the same time, when's it going to happen? Like, when are you going to tear your ACL? When are you going to tear your Achilles? When are you going to do something where you don't come back from it? I'm paying you $15 million a year. Like, how am I going to like manage that? How am I going to have that be a part of it? But getting back to like Barry Sanders, I think it just speaks to him that, like Joel said, he could have played a few more years at less than 1,000 yards, which he never did in his career. Just blew up Emmitt Smith's record. Like, it would not have taken him much more to do it. And I think like it's interesting that we have them both in Lions history. He's a lot like Calvin Johnson. Like, play extremely long, probably retired earlier than most people would have wanted him to, but still has his name cemented as one of the best in his position of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Lions are cursed, is what you're saying. We can never get the long term.
Yes.
You know,
But we get some of the greatest ever to come through. I mean,
star hair very long. You know, they're like a shooting star.
Yeah.
But
burning out.
Johnson was basically like a running back. The way he had to throw his body around to make certain catches.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to blame him either for stepping away when he did, because he took some. I mean, the ball was thrown up for him, and anybody could clip him below the legs, and he's coming down hard. Like, he had some horrible landings, I remember, but he still caught the ball, and like that takes its toll on a wide receiver just as much that's touching the ball 100 times a year. So.
Well, and what breaks my heart is he did an interview not long ago and was talking about medical marijuana for like pain relief with players, and he's like, if I could have had medical marijuana, I probably would have played a couple more years. Because like at the end of his career, the biggest thing he said, he was like, I just was in pain every day. Like, usually you take kind of Monday, Tuesday after a game to kind of get back so you can practice and do walkthroughs, and then you don't have much pain by the next Saturday, Sunday. But he was like, Monday I'd wake up with pain, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Every day I'd wake up with pain. And like, he just wanted some relief from it. But there was like a picture of his hands he did in an interview. And fingers are all just like this way and that way. And I was like, yeah, you needed to retire when you did. Like, he was so tall, his legs were such a big target that people would just hit it, helmets into the thighs like 5 times a game. And
There's no way to tackle him. He's 6'5", 240 pounds, and he's running like a 4.35. I mean, those are freak athlete numbers. So the only way to really stop them is hit them low.
Yeah. I think one last point on Sanders too is like all these running backs we talk about, like his running style was probably different than pretty much all these other guys. They might have had like his game in there, but there is nobody. If you were to go back and watch Barry Sanders film at all, there is nobody that runs like him. So anytime like anybody who like really grew up watching him or like was around watching him, because like I never really got a chance to watch him all that much because I was pretty young. He like people will be like, oh, he looks like Barry Sanders, like comparing a running back now to him or something like that. Like, I remember anytime my dad hears that, he just starts laughing, and he's like, no, like nobody can run like Barry Sanders. He's like, you can't do that. Like, no one can do what he did. I mean, the way he was able to get out of certain tackles and obviously the moves in the open field were incredible. But just, the way he was able to just wiggle in and out through holes that weren't even there, it's you don't see it right now, and you don't see it. We'll probably never see something like that again. So.
Yeah. Well, and if you during this like pandemic ever want to watch highlight reels, we talked about like Reggie Bush's college reel or Adrian Peterson's or some of these guys' highlight reels. Mm-hmm. Barry Sanders college and NFL highlight reels, just the most ridiculous reels ever. Like, there's some of those runs. I think there's one against the Cowboys where he's like, he is down. Like, Barry Sanders is getting tackled by 3 men. There's no reason for him to stay up. Everyone pretends the play's over, and he runs for a touchdown. Like, you say, oh, he looks like Barry Sanders. No, he doesn't. There's
no comparison to him.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that wrapped up, for our subject today, I found I am subscribed to The Athletic, great online source for sports news. I actually am unsubscribing from it this year. I might redo that, but I didn't know if I wanted to pay that bill. But they have some great content. So there was a survey they posted. Zach Boyer is the name, to give credit where it's due for the writer of this. They had 10,000 responses to a quiz about the next 10 years of the NFL. I'm going to skip a couple questions just because it's about attending games, and we don't really need to talk about that. But the first question I asked you guys during the pre-show, and then the other ones will be just off the top of your head. It's about
Uh-oh.
Ruh-roh.
Oh, man, the suspense is killing me, man.
I want to know.
Oh, that Wi-Fi he's got.
when you answer, say which team you're a fan of.
Oh, hey there.
Hey, we lost you. We got none of that.
All right. Let me start over then. Okay. So there's a survey by The Athletic. They got 10,000 responses about the next 10 years of the NFL, talking a lot about young players, what the whole entire franchises are going to look like. It's a guy named Zach Boyer was the editor of the article, so he put this together, to give him credit. Some of the questions are about attending games, so I didn't think I'd ask those to you, but I'm going to ask you guys about 15 questions about players and teams for the next 10 years in the NFL. So have that in mind next decade, 2020 to 2030.
15, all right. We're going to have to skim through these.
Yeah, they'll be quick. Quick. So the first one, I asked you guys during the pre-show, so you had some time to think about it. Say, when you answer, say what fan you are currently, or a team you're currently a fan of. And then the question is, if you had to choose a different team to be a fan of for the next 10 years out of any team in the NFL, which would you pick?
I can go first.
Okay, yeah.
And you can Ben answer first for all of them.
Yeah, all right. I'm a Lions fan currently. Easy answer, Chiefs. Just because I think over the next 10 years they have the best chance to be a dynasty. So that'd be really fun to follow a winning team for 10 years. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, Lions fan, also the Chiefs. I remember when the Lions played the Chiefs this year, I was super excited because I think the Chiefs were already pretty close to my next favorite team in the NFL, if not at least top 3. And gosh, man, Patrick Mahomes is elite, and I think he's going to be elite for a long time. And I think they're going to keep building this team. The fact that they were still able to afford Chris Jones on their salary, and they don't have to worry about Damian Williams opting out because Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's like they just have a replacement ready to go. They don't even have the best defense, but I think offense is kind of what appeals to the NFL fans' eyes right now, and that's the Chiefs summed up right there.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, and I'll read the feedback for the top couple for some of these questions. But number one team that people responded with, 20% of the votes was the Chiefs. Yep. I think I would pick the Ravens. Just to be a little different. I love Lamar Jackson. I love that young team. They have a great O-line. Hollywood Brown is incredible fun to watch. I think they're building something special. And I root for a Harbaugh brother, so that's nice. Chiefs were number 1 with 20%, then Baltimore with 8%, Arizona with 6%, and then the Buffalo Bills were number 4 with 5% of the vote. So I thought that was maybe. Okay, next question. Out of these 6 quarterbacks, who would you pick to lead your team for the next decade? Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, or Deshaun Watson?
Mahomes.
So, we kind of talked about the Chiefs already. No real qualms with that. 83% of the votes were for Mahomes. Lamar Jackson had 7% next, and then Deshaun Watson.
I just think Lamar Jackson's hurt or figured out in the next 3 years.
Yeah. He's gonna have to do something crazy to change it up. I mean,
yeah. All right. So same question, but for running back. So, which running back would you choose for the next decade? Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott, or Alvin Kamara?
So we have to pick one.
For the next decade.
For the next decade,
I'm going to go Saquon Barkley. I want to pick Christian McCaffrey because I think he's the best running back in the NFL right now. But we're talking about a decade, and I think Saquon Barkley. I think Christian McCaffrey's going to be beat up in 5 years. I mean, he's the amount of touches he's getting, it's insane. So,
definitely the amount of abuse that he's taking is going to take its toll on him. He's like the only focal point of the Panthers currently, and now even more so with Cam Newton gone, Teddy Bridgewater in. That running game is going to be very important. I thought when we were making this list, we were going to do about 6 players of quarterback, running back, wide receiver. So I picked 3 running backs initially, and my top 3 would have been, McCaffrey, Barkley, and Nick Chubb. But I guess if this is like someone we want just to be the focal point, then I've got to go with Barkley. There's just something. He seems more durable because he seems more built to take an NFL hit.
Yeah. So, I think I'd take a Barkley as well. This survey came back. Barkley and McCaffrey both had 40% each. And then the next highest was Nick Chubb with 7.5%. Alvin Kamara and Elliott both had 4%, and then Dalvin Cook with 3%. I do want to shout out Alvin Kamara. I would love him as a featured back. Like, he can kind of do a little bit of everything. With having who did they just get rid of? Mark Ingram. He didn't get to shine as much as he could have. They kind of do the committee thing with Murray even still, but I do love Alvin Kamara. I always pick him in fantasy, but I think Barkley is clear choice. So, okay, which young wide receiver would you have for the next decade? So the choices for this one are A.J. Brown for the Titans, Michael Gallup, Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, or Cortland Sutton.
Mm.
The votes on this one are much more split than the last couple.
I'm probably going to go with DK Metcalf just because he's a physical freak. Not that those other guys aren't. But I think he's probably got the most potential. I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Cortland Sutton ends up having the best career, though.
Yeah.
So if I had to rank those 3, oh, man. So I'm first, I guess I'm taking Chris Godwin. I think the numbers that he can put up, even alongside of Mike Evans, shows that he definitely could be a great number 1 without a Mike Evans even there, if that's got to be your focal point for the next several years. But I think DK I'd probably put number 2. To me, what pops up is what I do with him in Madden, and got to try to put that away. And then I think, like you said, Ben, Cortland Sutton to me is number 3. So I think in my order it'd be Godwin, Metcalf, and Sutton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would go with Chris Godwin as well. He's going to really, I think, be one of the best beneficiaries from Tom Brady being there. If Tom Brady is really good, he loves to spread the ball out. He likes that number 1 receiver. He can do that with Mike Evans, but he does love to spread the ball. This vote was a lot more split. 28% to Godwin, 22 to Metcalf, 20 to Cortland Sutton, and then 13 and 11 to Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown, respectively, and then Michael Gallup with only 5%.
Makes sense.
All right. So next is which young offensive lineman would you choose for the next decade? So we have Orlando Brown, Jack Conklin, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Ramczyk, Ronnie Stanley, and Laramie Tunsil.
I'm going to shout out Jack Conklin, Plainwell High School, not that far away.
Michigan State, and he ruined his life.
Went to MSU, but whatever. But it's from not that far from Kalamazoo area, so I'll shout him out. Really solid, though. Good. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these guys. So
they're all perennial Pro Bowl players. I just think Quentin Nelson's already like an elite offensive lineman. I think he's already the top of in the league at his position, guard. So I say Quentin Nelson personally, but Ryan Ramczyk's probably number 2 for me. And gosh, I don't know, between Stanley and Conklin and Tunsil, those are just other guys that pop in my head as obviously top of the class. So
yeah, I think I'd go with Nelson too. He's the most complete already. I think these guys will get to maybe like all pro level, like where Nelson is, but he is ready to go right now. All right. Okay, same question. Young defensive lineman for the next decade. We have Joey and Nick Bosa separately, not together.
We'll say they combined them. Wow.
No. Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Kenny Clark, Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, and Chris Jones.
And
on the last one, Quentin Nelson got 50% of the vote. Everyone else pretty much got around 10%.
I'm going to go with probably going to go with Joey Bosa. I haven't seen enough from Nick yet, but I'm probably going to go with Joey Bosa.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it depends on the scheme of defense that I want to run.
Yeah.
Joey Bosa, I mean, I definitely haven't seen enough from Nick Bosa. So the defensive rookie of the year looks good, but anything can change.
Right.
Joey Bosa, I've seen what he can do when he's healthy, and it's amazing. But when he's not, I don't want to take that gamble long term. I would definitely not go with Danielle Hunter, even though he's good. Don't get me wrong. I think that's why I'm going to go with Chris Jones and just play a mix of run and still get a little bit of pass rush effect from the middle. So I'm going to go with Chris Jones because I think he's at least second to Aaron Donald at that position. And I think long-term that's really nice to have that run stopper and still have that pass rush effect in the middle.
Yeah. I would actually go with Myles Garrett. I love Myles Garrett's game. He seems well-suited to have a long career as well, as long as he doesn't smack someone on the head.
Yeah, if he does that, again.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't do that, I think he can have one of the best careers out of all these guys and longest careers. So, yeah, the survey came back. We kind of talked about Nick Bosa hasn't shown enough, but he got 40% of the vote, which surprised me. Joey Bosa and Myles Garrett with about 20%. Kenny Clark had the least with 3, and then Chris Jones with 10, and Danielle Hunter with 7. So, all right, next we got just a couple more we can breeze through, but we got linebacker. Which young linebacker would you like for the next 10 years? Devin White, T.J. Watt, Jalen Smith, Darius Leonard, Tremaine Edmonds, and Devin Bush Jr. Representing Michigan.
All those guys are like 1 or 2 years in. That's such a small sample size. It's definitely – I mean, I get you're looking for young people, but –
That's tough. I mean, I'm probably going to go with Tremaine Edmonds because I think he is the most polished of them right now. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if either Devin Bush or Devin White end up having this. I think all those backers are going to be kind of crazy. They're all kind of in that new mode of middle linebacker who can fly around the field, super fast, can cover running backs in the backfield, that type of guy. Sideline to sideline linebacker for sure. But I think Tremaine Edmonds, just because he's the most polished right now, I think.
I guess then I would take someone that's not middle linebacker. I'm going to take T.J. Watt. I just think he's super effective on the edge, and I think I think he's even better than Devin Bush in pass coverage, although that's not saying a lot. Last year, Devin Bush was very bad in pass coverage. Now, he can grow. And obviously, he's sideline to sideline. He's super freaky athletic. If he can figure that out, he's going to be probably one of the best linebackers. Because to me, I think great tackler, a great sideline to sideline speed is as good as anyone in the NFL. And I think from what I see now, T.J. Watt looks like he could be at least as good as his brother already. So,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I would go with either T.J. Watt or Darius Leonard. I think Darius Leonard's a really good field general, like just all over the place, really disruptive. Good in coverage, but also can rush the quarterback and get a sack. But yeah, so T.J. Watt got 40% of the vote, Darius Leonard with 20, and then the rest of the guys got just around 10%. So yeah, like Joel, you said, it's tough to see, like, there's a small sample size, but they had to pick someone who's going to have 10 more years to their career. It's hard to pick some of those guys who have been in the league for 5 years.
Been in the league for like 6 years. They might not play 10 more years.
Yeah, look at Patrick Willis. He played like 8 or 9, and he was really one of the best.
Yep.
All right, so the last position group, and then there will be a couple questions about the NFL in a whole, and we can breeze through them. Defensive back. So this is safety and cornerback. Which one of these there's actually 7. So which one of these would you rather have? Jamal Adams, Minka Fitzpatrick, Shaquille Griffin, Marlon Humphrey, Derwin James, Jalen Ramsey, and Tre'Davious White.
Derwin James.
I also take Derwin James. A lot of people think Jamal Adams maybe. I just don't want that locker room cancer. Dude's already a loudmouth in his first couple of years, and very talented, but I mean, he's not even on the same team because he doesn't want to keep his mouth shut. He's not content with anything. And Derwin James just has a great attitude, loves to play the game, and
do so much. Not that Jamal Adams can't. Not that some of these other guys can't.
But he's Jamal Adams without the attitude. That's why I take Derwin James.
Yep.
I don't know what it is with, like, it seems like defensive backs and wide receivers always have the behavioral problems. I don't know what it is, but yeah, if it was just on-field production, I think Jalen Ramsey and Jamal Adams are my top two. But with all those things being taken into consideration, I would say Derwin James.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Jalen Ramsey can go suck it, quite frankly. I don't think he's that good. I think he's shown me enough times where he gets burned by really elite receivers. I mean, he's good against average and a little above average receivers, and every once in a while he has a decent game against a good receiver. But I see him get burned too much. And unless he was Darrelle Revis level in his prime, I'm not bushing on Jalen Ramsey. But yeah.
So Minka Fitzpatrick actually had the most votes with 24%.
See it.
Next would be Jamal Adams with 20, and then you got kind of around a 15 range. You have Derwin James, Jalen Ramsey, and Tre'Davious White, and then Marlon Humphrey and Shaquille Griffin had about 4%. So, all right. Yeah, so the next one, we only got a couple left. Which head coach would you choose for the next decade? So these are young coaches again. Some of the older guys who have storied careers aren't in it, even though they could probably coach for 10 more years, but they just went with the young guys. So we have Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Sean McDermott, Matt LaFleur, Cliff Kingsbury, and Brian Flores.
Shanahan.
Oh gosh, dude! That's tough. Obviously, McVay showed early on that he could get there, and he runs a good offense. He just doesn't have the playmakers.
I don't know. I think McVay was exposed a little bit to an extent. I think I think part of it is his team. I agree.
Yeah, that's part of his regime that he has. But I'm still not going to go with McVay. And I'm not going with Shanahan. Obviously, he's been able to do some things, but not clutch at all. Sheesh. And when we were ranking coaches, I was really high on Brian Flores. I think he's a really good coach with obviously a team that he's got to work some stuff through yet. But his demeanor is the type of coach that I personally want. I think he's a perfect blend of intensity and calm that players should flock to, and I think we'll flock to. And so I think I'm going to go with Brian Flores.
I just think Shanahan, from an X's and O's standpoint, can do so much. I think he's just above the others in that sense. Yeah, I mean, not clutch. That's kind of been at the forefront of the last few NFL seasons. But, I think McVay was exposed a little bit to an extent, in my opinion. He's going to have to adapt a little bit because I think teams figured out some of his ideas, his tight formations, a lot of crossing routes, stuff like that. He's got to adapt a bit. So we'll see what happens. But I like Shanahan.
Yeah. I'd probably go with. I'd probably go with Shanahan too. He's had a couple big choke jobs, but he's gotten to those points. He crafted one of the hardest to predict offenses recent memory with the 49ers last year. Just like things, runs and passes and play action and misdirection coming from a lot of places. If I didn't go with Shanahan, I think I picked Sean McDermott. I really like what he's done in Buffalo. I think he's just really starting to craft a good team over there. So I really like him. Matt LaFleur is the Packers coach, so I don't like him. Cliff Kingsbury would probably steal my wife from me, so I don't like him. Brian Flores can stay in Miami.
Hey, don't act like Matt LaFleur is not hot. Matt LaFleur.
Yeah. 50% of the vote went to Shanahan, 17% to McVay, 10% to Flores and McDermott each. and then
I
about.
thought Flores would be last. I'm not gonna lie. I just like him as a person, but I guess apparently some people are seeing him kind of like me, is very high potential and a guy that players flock to because just of his blend of intensity and calm. That's interesting. I thought he was gonna be dead last out of all those names.
I wouldn't be surprised if Cliff Kingsbury is back into college in like 3 to 4 years.
I also agree with that.
All right, we got 4 questions left. They're pretty quick, so we'll breeze through them. Do you think, yes or no, there will be a female head coach in the next decade? Head coach.
Head coach, no.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, 88% said no, 12% said yes, and I think no. I think
best case offensive or defensive coordinator. I think that's best case.
I think next 20 years we could see one, but I don't think in the next 10.
No.
There's a lot of
unless they create some new Rooney rule that women have to be like head coaches now. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I do think there are a lot of just good coaches in the NFL. Like there's guys who are going to hold on to their positions for 10 more years. So
yeah,
I think there's going to be a ton of turnover.
And you got to think that the next couple people, even if there is turnover, college coaches are going to come in, and those are all men. So they've got plenty of other people that have already built up a resume to just get there before any of these. Currently the highest female level is like an offensive or a special teams assistant. Like that, they don't have enough.
49ers, yeah. All right. This one has 3 answers. It's kind of a yes or no, but there's a yes with a caveat. Would you be in favor of an NFL team moving to London? Yes, no, or yes, as long as it's not my team.
No, because I just don't see the point. That's just, I mean, why?
Oh, that's the London Monarchs.
I mean, divisions are already super jacked up. For the most part, a lot of them aren't even anywhere close to each other now. There's definitely a couple that are like, okay, how did you get the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East? This doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. Ben froze up because he's got a funny little face in the corner.
Oh
well. But that's why I said, if I don't think there needs to. I agree to the point that they don't need a London team right now. I don't think it's big enough there, and I think the thing that they've got going on right now, where they've got 1 or 2 games a year played over in London, that's working out for them.
I agree. I don't think they need to. So, 56% of the vote said no outright. 31% actually said yes as long as it's not my team, and only 12.5% said yes.
I think with one quick point, I think with COVID too, I think it's going to just kind of put a real quick stop to that because they're not going to want to. I mean, they're trying to eliminate all travel right now as much as they can, and as obviously if COVID kind of gets nixed, that'd be great. But I don't think they're going to be wanting teams traveling overseas for a football game. They don't want to do that.
Yeah. All right, 2 last questions. They should be quick. Would you be in favor of an NFL expansion? Yes, no, no opinion, actually, is what they have.
So, we're talking kind of like how they've done the expansions in the past?
Yeah, brand new teams.
Brand new teams, but okay. Sure, as long as I don't know. Some of those expansion teams were really bad for a while. Jim Zorn was QBs. Yeah, pretty bad. Sure, yeah, that'd be kind of fun. I think it'd be fun. Certainly be fun.
I guess I see that. Yeah, it could be fun. I say no though. While they have 32 teams and other teams are still trying to catch up. Finally, hockey's got themselves 32 now with the Kraken, the Seattle Kraken. But the NBA is still at 30. I just think the baseball's still at 30. Other professional teams have to catch up first to 32. Yeah. I think 32 is a good number, but I think I'm good with sitting at 32 for a little while.
Yep. No, I would say no, just because I think they're at 8 divisions with 4 teams each and 16 teams in each conference. It just feels clean and perfect. So,
yeah.
Last question. Which of these on-field changes would you most like to see? So there's 4 possibilities. One of them is nothing, or not, at least not these 3. The other 3 are kicks off eliminated, PATs eliminated, or overtime rules changed to eliminate possibility of ties?
Overtime rules changed to eliminate possibility of ties. Ties are stupid.
I absolutely do agree. I think they're just nuts. I want college overtime rules, at least where you get to the third overtime and you have to go for 2. So you can vary your rules once you get to overtime. But I say you should be going 2 overtimes at least, head to head, and then you get to the third overtime, you kind of mess with what you need to do.
Or maybe don't make it exactly college, but like I think they've done a little bit to make sure each team gets a shot. If you kick field goal, you can't just automatically play for the field goal or whatever. If you score a touchdown, you win, that type of thing. Which I think, but like a lot of it now is still like who wins the coin toss. Because if you've got a shootout going where neither defense has stopped anybody all game long, and then they end up tied at the end of regulation, like team who gets the ball off the coin toss is going to win. Like it's, you know what I mean? It's just
it's the Patriots and Chiefs from a couple years ago.
Yeah, exactly the same thing.
Who wins that? Because Tom Brady's going to lead his team down if they win the coin toss. Patrick Mahomes is going to lead his team down. It was exactly better. So,
and I know like defense is part of the game too, but like I don't know, like.
Yeah, I think if I could throw out a change, I think college rules, but start from the 50.
Yeah.
Each get a possession, but from the 50. So you're not in field goal range, so you can't rely on kickers. You still have to gain yards. If it is a defensive stopping, like just defensive powerhouse teams, like it'll be interesting to see who can get the first down and get in field goal range. But
the kicking one makes sense just because of the fact that like you started at 50, NFL kickers can't really hit that, but college, there's 60% success rate of kicking field goals in college. Even at that 25-yard line. So
I would even say that 50-yard line thing could be a cool thing in college too, just because, I agree. Like even in college, if you've got like you're saying the success rate on field goals is a lot lower, but I just feel like it dumbs down the game and makes it not that fun to watch if they're literally playing for a field goal. Like it's just like come on, like really, like that's just annoying.
Yeah, so just to read off how this survey thing came out, they did say kickoffs eliminated / changed, or PATs eliminated / changed. So I don't know what they mean by that. I just said eliminated because I don't know what they mean by that. So 54% said overtime rules they want to be changed to eliminate possibility of ties.
Yeah. 18%
said nothing. 18% said kickoffs changed or eliminated. And 9% said PATs eliminated or changed. I think the kickoffs one, they could have more vote because it just recently got changed, and I think people could want it to just be changed back, even though I feel like the changes they made to the kickoff were good for like the reasons they made. Like they've definitely reduced injuries by a lot, by some like not getting a running start, not being able to do like those linking arm blocks and stuff. They've definitely been successful, but I don't really see PATs or kickoffs being eliminated, especially, or changed anytime.
I'd agree.
All right. Well, I think a lot of those could actually be like discussion topics in the future. Those are some interesting questions. We skipped a couple that could be really good, but yeah, it looks like we kind of had a lot of agreements on like how we would think the NFL is going to be shaped over the next 10 years, which is pretty cool, but there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait for Ben to come back. I'm not closing the show until Ben comes back.
I just heard him.
I know. Ben. Hey. There you are.
Hey, I was back. I could hear you guys.
Oh, I wasn't going to close that show until you were unfrozen.
How long was I gone?
About
like 5 hours,
7 seconds, maybe 7 seconds, I guess.
Maybe like I was talking, like discussing stuff, and you guys were just like, sure. One of those. So, whatever he said, yeah. So cool.
Nah, this is it's all good. Next week we're gonna do episode 30, so make sure that's a good number. That's amount of most professional teams in leagues.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Lucky number 30. We're gonna do that next week, and bring you more content. So in the meantime, check out the Busker group and buy and sell a house. Maybe do both at the same time through them, my main man Brett. And also, on behalf of Isaiah and Ben, we are out of here at the 6Three podcast. See you guys.
All right.
Yep.
Shout out Seattle Kraken. Those kits are freaking fire, man.
Pretty cool.
See ya.